If you think the rich should pay more in taxes simply because they can afford it, you're relying on something called the ability-to-pay principle. Brian Balfour recently wrote about problems associated with that principle. Brian is Senior Vice President of Research at the John Locke Foundation. And Brian, this is something that we hear commonly in discussion about taxes, is that any tax relief that would affect those who make more money to a greater degree than those who make less is attacked.
Yeah, exactly right. And this kind of brings to light the some of the debates over the recent Senate tax plan, and which offers tax relief for all taxpayers. And percentage-wise, it gives a greater tax break to middle-class households and low-income households relative to the upper-income households. But nevertheless, the left still complain about it because in dollar terms, the wealthiest would see a larger break, but that's pretty obvious why that would be the case, because the wealthiest pay such heftier tax bills dollar-wise. So, if you want to know why the biggest dollar amount from any tax break goes to the highest income earners, is because, well, those are the ones who are paying the highest dollar amount in taxes. So it just becomes kind of redundant, and then it kind of gets down to questioning, well, why are they going to oppose a tax cut that actually gives a larger percentage tax break to middle class and lower income households?
You wrote about this in a research brief for the John Locke Foundation, and one of the lines that I really enjoyed was you sort of paraphrased the old quote associated with bank robber Willie Sutton, that he robs banks because that's where the money is. You say that you would have tax cuts for those who make more income because that's where the tax dollars are.
Yeah. Why do they get the biggest dollar tax break? Well, that's because where the tax dollars are. They're the ones who are paying taxes. And I itemized some of the details about North Carolina's income taxes and who pays, and it's an inordinate amount, percentage-wise. I think it's the top 12-13% pay upwards of 50-60% of the state income taxes. So I mean, that's just who's paying. And low income earners, the bottom 20% that the left likes to talk about, their tax liability for the state income tax is next to nothing, really. A very small percentage points of the overall state income tax bill. So when they lament the fact that in dollar terms the lowest 20% of income earners will receive a small amount of tax breaks, it's because they're not paying any taxes. There's nothing left really to cut.
And a lot of that is because of the recent changes since 2013 in the standard deduction, raising the amount of what's sometimes called the zero tax bracket that all families can avoid paying. If you're at the lower end of the income scale, that could take out almost all, if not all, of your tax burden.
Right, yeah, and up to even a couple years ago already, those tax exemptions were exempting over 1 million households in North Carolina. They were completely exempt from the state income tax. So again, it's kind of hard to offer them more of a tax break off of their tax bill. It's already zero.
In your research brief, you put forward all of the data points that you were just referencing, and then you basically conclude that the folks who are left of center, who continue to oppose tax cut plans that would proportionately benefit middle and lower income households more, you say, put simply, their argument boils down to the rich should pay more because they can afford it.
Right, and that's kind of, as you referenced earlier, the ability to pay principle is often referred to as, and that's really kind of behind the reasoning behind the progressive income tax rates. They're going to tax the high income earners at a higher rate than everybody else, but that principle itself, ability to pay principle itself, is pretty flawed in large part because it uses a snapshot in time, which is your income for that year, to measure your ability to pay. So take, for example, you have two households that earn the exact same amount of money in a given year, but maybe one has, $500,000 worth of savings built up and the other household has none. Okay, so their ability to pay is obviously not even close to being similar, but looking at that snapshot, that 1 year of income, their ability to pay looks identical, and that's where the left is focused on. And or conversely, say two households with the same income, and one is caring for an elderly relative within the house and has tens of thousands of dollars of medical bills, for example. Again, both have the same income, both according to the left would have the same ability to pay, but clearly the financial realities say they don't have the same kind of ability to pay. So trying to treat them, treat households exclusively based on that year's income and determining from that their quote-unquote ability to pay taxes is just really an incomplete picture.
You also point out that this ability to pay doctrine also fails because it harms society by more sharply penalizing the most productive.
Right, yeah. So in a market society, those that are most productive, those that are most efficient at serving their fellow man by producing goods and services that they value, they're typically rewarded by that with high incomes. And so this progressive taxation based on this ability to pay principle, it's levying a harsher punishment on those very people who are most productive, that are most efficiently serving consumers. And that's just when you start to put in disincentives for those people who are achieving that, who are serving and benefiting the economy like that, that starts to harm everybody. The economy, the economic growth overall starts to slow, and of course, any time the economy slows and becomes stagnant, it's going to be those low-income households, those people on the margins of employment that are hardest hit.
And I like the way that you wrap this up, quoting the economist Murray Rothbard, saying that rather than being an evident rule of justice, the ability to pay principle resembles more the highwayman's principle of taking where the taking is good. If you'd like to read that quote along with the rest of the John Locke Foundation research brief, go to johnlocke.org. The author of that brief, titled "Why the Ability to Pay Principle to Justify Progressive Taxation Fails," is Brian Balfour. He is Senior Vice President of Research at the John Locke Foundation. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mitch.